We are recording. Mark Sidley, I have your letter here to my father from the Cavendish School, on behalf of two of your students. And as I promised, I will conduct a brief interview with Group Captain Leonard Bartlett, who is sitting in front of you now on the screen, and ask him the questions that have been prepared by Joseph, Todd and Joshua Gillam. You okay?
Yep.
Okay, let's begin. Joshua, who is, to the best of my recollection, 14, asks you, when you joined the RAF at 23, what was it like knowing that you could potentially be fighting pilots that had already experienced air combat in Spain?
Oh, fact of life, actually. So there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You just had to make sure that you knew what you were doing. Yes, I think that you had to make sure that your tactics are right and everybody was sort of going in the right direction.
Were your tactics right?
No. We were flying Vics of 3 in line of stern, by which time the German were flying loose finger 4, which is a system still being used today, very manoeuvrable. They tended to fly in pairs of aircraft, so 2 pairs made 4, and that's how they operated. They were way ahead of us.
Explain loose finger 4. What do you mean by that?
Well,
4 abreast?
Yes. Yes, 4 abreast. One sort of the one man leading, 2 keeping sideways watch, but in the main you got a better way of scaling the aircraft. Whereas if you were flying in Vics of 3, this chap was leading and this one, it wasn't as flexible. For instance, if you changed direction, you had to change formation.
Right.
This one had to slide underneath, this one had to move the top. Yeah. So the finger 4 was a great system.
So what were you flying?
Well, we were flying the old system, and it wasn't until after the battle when people sort of sat down and thought about it, knowing that at the time something was wrong, but it was you couldn't change tactics in the middle of a battle.
But you said after the battle it changed. Up to them, what was it, 3 astern? 1 in line of 3?
Yeah.
You followed one another? And what did it change to after the battle when you realised you had the tactics wrong?
You kept together as a pair.
Okay. All right. Question 2. Were you nervous, excited, or did you just think of it as a job that needed doing when you went into battle?
Excited, I think, yeah.
Was there any fear?
No, I think by the time you get down to actually getting involved in air warfare, it's too late to be frightened. If you're frightened, you might as well go home.
You obviously must have spoken to yourself or consoled yourself a lot. Did it take courage to climb into the aircraft?
No, not really. You just ran out as fast as you could, got in and off you went.
You just got on with the job in the moment?
You were very nervous on the climb up, but once you saw the opposition, you were too busy to be frightened, yeah.
Did you sweat a lot? Or were you not aware of it because you were so concentrated?
No.
Okay.
No.
What was it like, is the next question. What was it like when you first actually flew an aircraft? What was that like for you?
Oh, that was also very exciting. I can remember my first solo. I can remember being downwind, turning across wind, sort of thinking, what the hell am I doing up here?
You had to sort it out yourself.
Then I think you're nervous at that stage of your training, and then you gain confidence until you've got 50 or 60 hours in. And that's a pretty dangerous time because you think you're pretty good and you really don't know much about it at all.
So a lot of it was learning on the job and having to sort out problems in the air while you were there, making lots of mistakes, but saying to yourself, I'll never do that again.
Well, you can make too many mistakes close to the ground. Landing was always a problem. Well, no, it's landing where accidents occur, sure.
Bouncing it back onto the ground.
You get to the point at some stage where you're taxiing in and you don't really remember the landing. You do it so automatically, but initially you're concentrating hard, and it depends. It depends how much how good your instructor's been.
Yeah.
If you look too close to the aircraft, you have to look right along where you're landing, not where you are. Just short of that.
Where you're going rather than where you are. Did you feel exhausted after flying in combat? You were still on an adrenaline rush?
Yes, I didn't feel exhausted. Yeah.
Okay. You were unfortunate in being shot down in your Hurricane, though you were able to bail out. What happened in order for you to be shot down?
What happened is, because I took my off the board. And instead of really concentrating what was going on around me, I was concentrating on where we were going and what we were going to do. And you can't do that. As soon as you're not aware of what goes on around you, you're halfway to being in trouble.
You have to have eyes everywhere in the sky?
You have to keep looking, yes, my word. And you had a mirror here, up on the windscreen, and you had to try and take the whole lot in at once.
Having been shot down, did this experience change your perspective of air combat?
No, just got to be bloody sight more careful.
And you were, because here you are.
Yeah.
Okay, now you managed to escape the aircraft. How did you manage to get out? What was the process and the procedure?
Undo your straps and push yourself up. Once you get your armpits above the level you're pulled up,
The
wind gets under.
The wind just gets under,
Yeah, sure.
Fast enough for you to clear the tail as it comes past, so to speak?
I hit I think my right ankle just hit the tail.
And you swore, no doubt.
Quite likely, yes.
And
I think I lost my boots.
What altitude were you when this happened?
Oh, I think about 10,000 feet.
Wow. Long way up and a long way down.
Yeah.
What happened when you hit the ground? Tell the story about that.
Oh, I think I was met by a farmer with a shotgun.
Whereabouts did you come down?
Near Uckfield, if you know where Uckfield is in England.
Where is it?
Oh, somewhere down the south, west. And I worked in the wholesale meat industry before the war, and I knew a butcher in Uckfield. So once I'd reported to the police and dumped my parachute, I walked across into the butcher shop, and the chap, strangely enough, recognised me. So he said, "We better go and have a drink." So he and myself and the sergeant all went into the pub and had a drink.
Or two?
Or two, yeah.
Did not the police officer, the police sergeant, give you a lift back to the village on his bike?
Yeah. Oh, I imagine so. I really don't know.
They did find the engine to the aircraft some years later, did they not?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Amazing experience. Now, the Royal Air Force had about 640 aircraft and the Luftwaffe close to 2,600. Considering that the German pilot had considerable experience from their Spanish campaign, and the fact that the RAF was outnumbered by more than 4 to 1, how was the Royal Air Force able to gain victory?
I think because we were fighting over UK. We had our own, we had a radar system that worked, and their defence system was quite successful, I think. Without it, we'd have been lost, yeah.
Without radar?
Yes, sure.
And also you were doing short sorties, weren't you? Whereas the Germans had a lot further to fly.
They were, by the time, I mean, if you got involved in a fight and you fired up all your ammunition, there was no point in staying there, so you got home as fast as you could.
And you were saying earlier the reason for landing was not a matter of picking up fuel, it was to pick up more ammunition.
Yes, sure. Well, get the guns reloaded, top the tanks up, sure.
Excellent. Now, on paper the odds were stacked against you in the Luftwaffe's favour, in fact. Did you know that you were about to take part in one of the biggest blows delivered to the Nazis in the war?
No, not really.
It was all in a day's work.
I think we knew that the Germans things would change once we were driven out of Europe. I really don't know. I think you just accepted it. Yeah.
Were you galvanised by flying for king and country? Was that the sort of thing that kept you going day by day?
Well, it's to keep these bloody Germans away from the place, yes.
Okay. So you knew it was a matter of survival?
Yes, it was essential you tried to survive. It wasn't your override, but I remember one of the instructors, when I left, I went back to the office to get a logbook signed, and he said, "Bartlett, I give you one last bit of advice. Aim to be the oldest and not the bravest." He said, "Don't throw your life away," which I think was a very good thing, because I think a lot of chaps didn't get good tactical advice.
His advice obviously sank in with you, because here you
really
are.
stuck. Yeah, I never forgot it.
Did that change your attitude, do you think? Were you a bit cavalier prior to that bit of
but
advice?
It made me realise exactly what it was all about, and you really had to keep your wits about you if you want to survive. Yeah.
You certainly are a survivor. Now, as a Hurricane pilot, how did you feel compared to the Luftwaffe's fighters? What were you fighting against? What were you flying against?
Oh, 109s.
Messerschmitts?
Yeah, they were bloody good, and they had some crack-hot pilots too.
Did you have respect for that pilot?
The Luftwaffe was immensely confident. Immensely confident.
Was there a mutual respect for pilots between the two air forces?
Oh, I think so, yes. I don't think there's any animosity.
Yeah.
No.
Who did you admire that they had, that you may have flown against?
Yes, they were bloody good, and that you admired, and probably improved your own performance too. I mean, you knew you had to be pretty smart to stay alive.
And in comparison, Hurricane to ME-109 on a par? Or was it a better aircraft? Or was the Hurricane in some ways a better aircraft?
The Hurricane was the last of the old style construction of airplanes. From then it went to tin cans, pressed metal. Spitfires, 109s, 110s, yeah. But
the war horse, the battle horse, the Hurricane was a reliable aircraft? One that could really take it?
Very reliable, very strong. Operated overseas for years as a fighter, but then was completely lived its life as a fighter, but became a ground attack aircraft. They put 4 rockets on them.
Mm-hmm.
Put a long-range tank under one wing and 4 rockets under the other. Yeah, that's right.
You felt confident flying a Hurricane?
I hated it.
Hated it?
Oh, I hate that. Ground attack is bloody dangerous, yes.
Okay. But it being generally flying a Hurricane, you felt that you were in a reliable aircraft? Sitting behind a Merlin engine?
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, yes. But like all liquid-cooled engines, the radiator is the problem. Get a bullet in the radiator, you're finished. Because all your coolant runs out. And eventually the engine just stops, bomb.
Seizes.
Sure. So if you get a bullet in the windscreen, you want to get down on the ground as fast as you can go. Even if you will land, wheels up.
So the question, how did you feel? Did you feel that you were disadvantaged, or did you feel that both aircraft were equally good? They were comparable.
Oh, they were comparable, yeah, sure.
Let me take you back briefly. When we talked about pilots you were flying against, any famous pilots that you know that you flew against, that you had admiration for?
But I don't think we knew much about them at the time. I did actually, but I've forgotten.
Okay. What about some of your own colleagues? Who were some of the great flyers that you may have had the chance to fly with in the squadrons?
I can only tell you, fearless chaps are bloody dangerous, because they really don't understand when you're in a very dangerous situation. We had a chap in A flight, Manfred Chalene. Yes, on the point of being fearless. And that doesn't mean he's brave, it means he's fearless. And in many ways, they didn't appreciate how bloody dangerous it could be.
They were
He
reckless.
was a marvellous shot. And that's the difference between chaps who fly around and chaps who get any sort of a score. All chaps who got any sort of a kill rate were all good shots. Manfred was a fantastically good shot. I tell you, when we were on the rest, we went up to Scotland, and another sergeant pilot and myself went off to shoot some rabbits, and we came back with a couple of rabbits, and this too. And about, not perhaps quite as far as Roddy's house, but at that sort of distance, seagulls were flying by, and Manfred put the gun up, and I laughed. And he said, "You don't think I can hit it?" Bonk, and down went the seagull. He was a bloody good shot. And Johnny Johnson was also another very good shot. Johnny wasn't in the Battle of Britain, so all his kills were done on offensive operations over France. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. Tactics or rules? Rules of the road, rules of the air that you kept in mind while you were in an aircraft?
Well, yes, the formation that you fly dictates how you fly and how you operate. And it was this question of flying in pairs, flying in threes, which was wrong. And it wasn't until we flew as pairs. So we got the operating unit was 2 aeroplanes. So you've got 2 aeroplanes and there'd be 4 aeroplanes together. And it really wasn't until after the Battle of Britain that we realised how the formation that the Germans were flying. And that literally became universal standard practice. And as far as I know, it's still flown today.
What was it? What kind of experience was it to be in combat, or just to fly in general? What was the experience like for you?
I enjoyed flying. I enjoyed flying very much. Sure. Flying out of UK and was great. I mean, we were near where we used to live, at Woodbridge, which I knew quite well, and you knew the land. You could fly back to base without any sort of aid or assistance. Sure.
Were you based at Martlesham Heath?
Yeah.
Okay. Joseph says he's heard the troops on the ground talked about how they would rather be in an aircraft than be on the ground. Do you agree with them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The last thing I wanted to be was a soldier. My father was an infantry soldier in the First World War, and he didn't say much about it. But he didn't really enjoy it. And I think the ordinary English private, at least the private in any army, gets a real raw deal. He's the last. I mean, the Americans call them GIs. What does it stand for?
General Infantryman.
General issue. And it's something you don't have to account for. Torches, batteries.
It's an expendable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Air Force, you had to write bloody documents to get anything out of the stores.
Yeah.
But not with the Americans. It wasn't worthwhile. I mean, things like torches and footwear, kid it.
Okay. Questions are a little bit more about your youth now. What sort of things did you do for fun or as a hobby when you were Joseph's age of around 14?
Climb trees, rode a motorbike, climb trees, lit fires, cooks potatoes on an old fry pan.
When you would go on.
I don't know. We lived really in one of the suburbs, and we had a golf course behind the house, which was a very large course. So when they weren't playing golf, you could go off and play on that.
And where was this?
Marswell Hill.
Marswell Hill. Okay.
North London.
So, Joseph will be fascinated to know, when you reflect on life as young people have it today, what was life back then for you as a young person? What was life like?
Oh, easy.
Simple?
Yes. We always had plenty of food. And
You entertained yourselves? And you had
yes,
the freedom?
Rode on bicycles, freedom. We were always short of cash, I think. I don't think my family was terribly rich. Not at that stage anyway.
Did you get pocket money?
But we were never short of food or clothes or...
But did you get pocket money? Or did you get a job to get money?
Never got a job.
Doing what?
I think I helped a butcher shop and a baker a long time, and milkman. At that time, horses, their milk carts where the big dairies were pulled by horses. Horse knew the way.
You just followed it, knew where to go. Okay. So what did you want to be when you were young, 14? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know, except I was apprenticed after I left school to an engineering company, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I didn't want to work in the factory. I thought it was...
So when did flying come into it?
I simply drifted in. I was lucky enough to get a job in the London wholesale meat markets. Which I had until until I was called up.
When did flying come into the picture?
And it was only through working in the market and talking to one of the sons of one of the chaps who was store about what he did at weekend. I'd been out on my aircraft, on my motorbike, watching the airplanes land at Hendon, and I said talking to Peter Paul, and he said, I said I'd been out on my motorbike watching the airplanes land at Hendon, and he said I was probably flying one, and that's how that was my first lead into the fact that there was a reserve. And the RAF realised that if there was a war, we hadn't got anything like enough pilots. And they started this thing called the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve. And the plan was that if you were in a flying school and had learned to fly, they would pay for you. But they still didn't get enough people, so they, got to the point where they would actually teach you to fly. And that's how I got in.
That's how you got in. What sort of things did you talk about as young people? What did they talk of the post-set first of all?
Motorbike racing. We went to the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
To watch the TT races. And I get a bit confused about that because
was the street.
I think we only went one year. And I remember it rained all the way from London to Liverpool. And I was wearing a storm guard and waders. And when we got to, and I had a brand new sports jacket on underneath with this large woolen scarf around my neck. And when we got halfway to Liverpool, the only thing that was dry on me were my feet, because the water hadn't got round the bend. And all the dye had run out of this brand new, out of my scarf, into this brand new sports coat.
So you loved motorcycle racing, and did you go to the movies?
The Isle of Man, yes, the Isle of Man races were just on the roads. I mean, you found yourself a good stop on a corner or a straight. They were fantastic races. Yes.
Did you go to the movies?
Most Saturday nights, yes.
Did you read books? What sort of books?
Yes. Adventure mainly. I've read Scott and I've read Amundsen.
So biographies?
Yes. Or you get them out of the libraries are wonderful, let's face it. Fiction, I've probably read Henty. The Scott books and Amundsen. It was incredible that these two organisations set off with totally different ideas of what they're going to do. Amundsen carried enough fuel. When he got to the pole and they were coming back, they knew they had enough fuel to get back and some to spare. And they discussed among themselves whether they should leave some of the fuel there in case Scott. And they convinced themselves that the likelihood of Scott not having enough fuel was too ridiculous to think about. So they didn't leave him any. And it made all the difference. Scott didn't make it. And Amundsen and his team spent all their time remaking their boots, redoing their sleds, training the dogs. They also, as I said earlier, planned to eat the dogs if necessary.
Totally different attitude and approach.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Your favourite sport when you were young?
Soccer, I think.
Favourite teams?
Oh, Spurs and Arsenal.
Okay. Your favourite food?
Oh, meat and veg.
Good staple stuff?
Well, pizzas weren't in there. Pizzas were an unknown quantity then.
Pizza, But you loved Yorkshire pudding?
We had plenty of. We were great meat eaters.
And you liked your Yorkshire pudding?
And food. I mean, my mother. I always remember my mother getting the greengrocer called at the door. Two brothers. They had a 5-ton truck that was covered, and they had all their greengrocery in that. And they called certainly once a week. And I remember my mother used to have a small zinc tub. And that was full of vegetables.
Fantastic. Okay, those are the questions from Joseph. Joshua, 12, asks you, how did you feel while you were in action in the air?
Well, I really don't know, because, I mean, you're busy concentrating on what goes on. It's absolutely vital that you're aware of what's going on around you. So you've no time to daydream.
What was that, the phrase the instructor said to you? Don't be the bravest, live the longest, was that?
No, don't be the bravest, be the oldest. Aim to be the oldest and not the bravest.
Okay.
And he said, Jimmy Ailing was his name, said, Bartlett, I'll give you a last advice, don't throw your life away.
Okay.
Aim to be the oldest, not the bravest.
How did you feel when you were awarded the DSO?
Solid.
Why?
Well, I didn't think I'd done anything particular that warranted it. There are two sorts. There's a, well, no, there are not two sorts of DSOs. But sometimes, if chaps aren't up to VC, they get awarded a DSO on that. But certainly at the end of every year, about promotion time, there's a list comes out, and you don't get notified at the time, but you get a letter from probably the OC or maybe the Chief of Air Staff congratulating you.
Did it say on the citation why you got the DSO?
said I think the number of airplanes I'd shot down and the way I'd run the squadron and wings, yeah.
When you compare, you talked about it, it's not a VC, but where does it stand in relation to a DFC, a flying cross?
Oh, it's you get a DFC for the number of airplanes you've destroyed generally. I don't think that's, they want you to have destroyed something, some airplanes in combat, but I don't think that's the overruling factor.
Was the DSO relative to your time during the war, through all the different theatres of war besides the Battle of Britain that you served in?
No, it would be after the Battle of Britain.
Okay.
After North Africa.
After North Africa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a fairly proud medal that you have?
Yeah, I certainly didn't get a DSO out of the Battle of Britain. No.
Okay. Final question.
I'd been happy to get a DFM.
A DFM?
Well, the airmen's got medals, only officers got crosses.
Okay.
Did you not know that? That's class distinction.
A distinguished flying medal?
That airmen got medals and officers got crosses.
And you flew in the Battle of Britain as an airman, not as an officer?
As a sergeant pilot.
Sergeant pilot.
Sure.
Which was the ranking rank for anybody who joined the Air Force. You came in as a sergeant?
Yes.
Because you were a flyer?
Yes.
Okay.
But it didn't mean to say you couldn't lead a flight or Scotland if the situation got that desperate. Sure.
Final question. When you look back over your career in the Air Force, both during the war and your post-war career, what is your proudest memory?
I think becoming a group captain. Yeah, I felt if I made group captain, I'd be doing jolly well. Yeah, sure.
Was it
and the day, do you remember Bill Crawford Compton? You probably
Yes,
didn't.
yes.
Well, he came through Aden and he bought an old group captain's hat. And he came, I can't remember he came to dinner with it, but when he was leaving, he said, "Here, Red, you'll need that tomorrow morning." And it was at one of his old group captain's hats. I may still have it, I don't know.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a typical Bill. Yeah.
But you'd achieved that. You said you got your DSO for leading a squadron. What was your primary squadron? What was the number?
Oh, 253. Well, yes, 17 with the Battle of Britain. Then I had 137 and 253. Yeah.
Did you feel immense pride marching in Churchill's funeral?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yes. It was a bloody cold day, if you remember. Airmen who were standing with reversed arms couldn't stand still, they were so cold. Yes, immensely so. Churchill knew he was meant to be famous, and he had this great drive. I don't think England would have kept going had it not been for him. I think there are quite a lot of people in UK who in many ways were sympathetic to the Germans. They didn't like Hitler and they didn't like the mob, but I think a lot of people in UK were overall sympathetic to the Germans. And I think they're angry about being bombed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Germans were equally surprised when they got bombed so heavily by Bomber Command. The Bomber Command man was ruthless. I mean, he flew his chaps on 10 tense clear days when he should have stepped at home. I mean, they lost 90 bombers one night. That's 90 times 7 chaps.
Mm-hmm. 7 crew on board.
And there was a great long line of burning airplanes on the ground. Bomber Harris. And he didn't get any, I don't think he got any decorations at the end.
Can I just take you back to Churchill's statement?
Yes.
Was he right to say that never in the field of human conflict was so much
Yes, I
owed
think
by
so,
so many
yes.
to so
You've got to
few?
go back to Agincourt or something like that. Yeah. I think that's what it stood for, literally. If England had fallen, it would have meant Europe would have fallen as well. So how do you get back into Europe?
Good stuff. Thank you.
If America's on your side and you've got to bring everything over from America, how the hell do you get it? Where do you get it in to start? Huge problem. Yeah.
Thank you very much.